So Jeff, you've been quoted as saying that IBM is focusing on operationalizing culture. Can you say a little bit about what that means to operationalize culture and why it's important?
I think why it's important is probably the first piece, which is it's really the only unique thing any company really has. Anything else can be copied, your products and your strategies. So the idea is there a way to create a great culture and make it something that you can learn, that you can practice, that you can measure, and that you can adapt so that you can continue to get better. So for us, it's finding the mechanisms and defining culture in a way so it's tangible for employees, so we can raise the water level of talent and then ultimately the tactics and the methods they can do so we can compete against the best tech companies.
Mm-hmm. And how are the, how is culture changing? You know, what does it mean to operationalize culture today as opposed to, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think the thing that we looked at is, we want to have the innovation of the best small tech companies, but hopefully the scale of IBM. And we've got 400,000 employees. If you add in contractors, another 130,000. So the question is, how can you create something with the best practices that are out there? And in our minds, that culture is around creating, loosely coupled, tightly aligned, 8 to 10 person squads, essentially a Spotify model. And defining a set of practices that people can go and learn. And it's no different than if you're learning to play the guitar or you're taking a course or you're on a sports team. You have an instruction or a playbook or something that you go and learn, you practice it, you get feedback, and then you get better at it. And so for us, we created a curriculum around 30 key agile practices so that we can loosely connect our teams, but have them learn it. Then when they have issues, we have agile coaches to help. And then to measure it, we have maturity assessments where we can look at squads, see how they're doing, look at leaders, see how they're doing, and give them the signals to get better. So I think the thing to do is you have to create mechanisms to give feedback to the teams. And in our case, with so many people, I want the connection between individuals in squads to learn from each other and teams to learn from each other. So the connecting the dots happens with the practitioners doing the work and not the leaders in the overhead that are trying to do it. So it's scaling these squads at a much faster and breadth of pace than the overhead. And I think that's when you can really scale innovation.
Okay, great. So you mentioned feedback and getting feedback to the teams as being a really important element of this. How do you get that kind of feedback to the teams, and what kind of feedback do they need in order to do this kind of coordination?
I think there's another thing we learned is that the feedback should be what the teams feel are important so that they can get better. Again, a lot of cases in big companies, we have the leaders create lots of metrics and things that help them, but don't necessarily help the teams get better at their job. So we actually enlist, the teams to figure out what is it that'll help you get better. We want to create, continuous delivery squads that are putting new services into production at the same pace as the best tech companies. So the feedback, in our case, we do maturity assessments. We look and say, we've got roughly 30 key agile practices. Are you in an entry level, a practitioner, or an expert? And then we actually publish those so everyone can see them. So we've noticed the team dynamics are quite good. People don't mind being compared to other teams. They look at it like a league of great teams and find out who's bettering their practice and go and copy it. Whereas it's very different with individuals. No one likes to be told they're worse than someone else. But we think that the team dynamic of giving them the signals that help them get better really, really helps advance and get better at a faster rate. So in our case, in addition to looking at maturity of practices, we'll look at throughput. How much can we get through a funnel? We look at velocity, how fast we can get it through. Cycle time in work in progress, making sure that we're giving work at the right pace to the teams to maximize their productivity. But the underlying hypothesis is, let's find out from the teams and the individual what helps them get better, give them the signals, give them the coaching support and curriculum so they can learn on their own, invest in their own career, and take seriously, that they have to know their craft.
Yeah. So you mentioned 8 to 10 person squads, and there are these teams of teams working together. How do you scale that? How do you make sure that these teams are actually working with these other teams, and how does that coordination happen?
So one of the things that we do, we did a design from the bottom up. I've always said, if restructures, were a measure of productivity, every big company in America could be growing at 100%. So instead of organizing top down, organize the squads around the work. And then we run a modified Spotify model. So we have squads that are formed into multiple tribes into a domain. And then what we do is we try to put the mechanisms in place, and actually a little bit of forcing the issue as well. Most big companies, I have roughly 20,000 people. Most big companies would have high-level functions like enterprise architecture, project management offices, strategy groups. And our philosophy of strategy is for the leaders, not for strategists. And that enterprise architecture and the decision should be made by the practitioners. So we run a guild and chapter model where you join a guild for the things for the craft that you're passionate about and connect to others in different squads to make the decisions. So actually the way we selected Slack was not done at the high level. It was done by practitioners in a guild across IBM that said, this is the tool we want to use. I just back their decision. So I think that's what we're really trying to do is really, you have to have enough talent density within your squad so that they get better and course correct, but you also need them interested in their craft to connect to others in squads around the world and connecting teams together.
So with this sort of bottoms-up approach, what is the role of leadership and how is that evolving?
So I think for the leaders, there's a basic thing. One, they need to give clarity of purpose to their teams. That's number one. And the second is create a productive work environment and then get the heck out of the way. So the signals that we give our leaders are the things that we feel are the most important for them to help create productive squads. So we measure the maturity of our leaders on where's the evidence they know how to form 8 to 10 person cross-functional teams that are loosely coupled but tightly aligned to our agile practices, how well they manage the flow of work into their squads, are they measuring the right things, the velocity and throughput metrics, are they attracting and replenishing new talent in their squads, are they listening and learning from others, which I think is the single hardest thing to do. We're very good at listening to ourselves. We're not good at going outside, taking something that someone else has done, pulling it back in and embedding it in the way we work, and then having good influence and impact beyond the scope of service. So those 6 characteristics, it doesn't matter whether you're a first-line leader or an executive, those are all critical and a priority for us to give the signals to our leaders so that they help their squads get more productive. And I think the issue of leadership is really creating the productive environment and handing the reins over to talented teams, and they'll figure out how to solve the problems. We shouldn't be the problem solvers. We should be the environment solvers.
Yeah. So transparency is one of the things that seems to be essential for high levels of collaboration across the organization and across boundaries. But protecting information is also really important.
Yes.
How do you go about balancing the two of those?
Well, I think in our case, we would lean on transparency more than protection. Mm-hmm. There's intellectual property that we need to protect, and we can do that, through the different, vehicles that we have to store and share content. But I think the transparency in our case, that we publish the maturity results of our squads, and in fact, we have the squads self-assess their own maturity, mm-hmm. and we will, regulate that through our coaching teams that come in to make sure they're not gaming the system. But we also publish that because we really want to show it's important that you keep score. And I mentioned, playing guitar or playing in sports, you want to get something, you want to learn it, you want to practice it individually, you want to practice with your team, you want to get some feedback, and that's, I think, really important to get better. If you want to learn, you not only have to take on something new, you need to practice it and ask for feedback. We give the feedback, we publish it, give the people, the individuals and teams, the signals visibly, and visual control systems work better. We've seen it in manufacturing with lean systems for a long time. And so we really want to give good, simple visual controls and make that available to all the teams so that they can regulate and learn and find who they can learn from and get better at a faster pace.
Great. So when operationalizing culture, I can see how that could be done when everybody is co-located. But of course, IBM is highly distributed. Yeah. A lot of people working from home, a lot of people working from around the globe. So how do you operationalize culture, create a common culture when you're so distributed?
It's hard, and to be honest, I mean, the greatest learning takes place when you have a big, hairy problem and you get people sitting next to each other to help each other solve it. So I think, one, you do need to have some principles, and in our case, we had to go back and say, we had teams, a team might have been 2 people in Boston, 2 in New York, 1 in India, 3 in China. That's not a team, that's just a collection of people. And say, we're going to do as much as we can to consolidate our locations, co-locate squads. Not that all the squads have to be in the same location, but you'd like them in the same time zone. You want the leaders sitting with their squads, and then you want to give them good collaboration environments to connect to each other. So I think you have to understand how people learn and create a good environment for them. So for us, it was consolidation of sites. It was getting people, to come in and work with their team members to get better, and getting leaders in front of their people. Because if a leader's working from home, and is not, regulating an argument between Sally and Bob, they're not exercising their leadership skills either. So for us, it really has been, a shift back toward, get with people, and let's get them together in a productive environment so they can learn and raise the level of talent and experience, which also raises the ability to take on new tactics and methods that maybe in the initial playbook you weren't gifted enough to do. And I think, for us, I think you have to have a good playbook that recognizes the situation you're in. And for us, we have roughly 20,000 people in my team, but IBM with over 500,000 people, you really need to start bottom up. You need to have your principles and your playbook in place so people know where you're going, and a simple goal. Language is important, and for us, we had a simple goal of, let's just get the daily delivery. Because I knew if we could solve that, we would have had to solve the tough problems of build automation, test automation, deployment automation, tough technical problems to solve. But I was backing the squads to be able to figure out. Our job was to create the goals, good clarity of purpose, give good tooling so that people could learn, and get people back congested together so that they could learn from each other at a faster pace.
Great. So you mentioned the collaboration environment being really important to culture, and being able to create this common culture. What is important in the collaboration environment for that?
I think, one, it has to serve, in our case, it has to serve both individuals connecting to each other, but also teams connecting to each other. And because our culture is an agile squad culture, and what we want, and it really is in our principle loosely coupled, we want these squads to be portable, to take on different problems, move them around based on priorities changing, and the collaboration environment with our people all over the world has to be able to facilitate communication and learning and feedback. So Slack, was a great entry for us for this, and quite honestly, we started it as, my view is, well, if the practitioners say we need it, let's just open up, see who gets on it. In a couple months, we had 50, 60,000 people using it. I thought, well, it's got traction. So we thought, let's move forward with that. But I think it also took a lot of the responsibility in our real gifted practitioners to say, gosh, he's serious, he's going to turn it on to us. We better make the right choices, and usage and consumption is the greatest indicator of what's working. So we would experiment with other things that didn't work either, and if it didn't work, we would just stop it. But the collaboration environment, I think, is connecting individuals and connecting teams together so that those squads can connect the dots on solving big problems and get it away from the leaders. And so what we've been able to do is significantly reduce the number of layers of management. When I started, we had 13 layers. We're down to 5, and we have a lot fewer leaders, a lot more practitioners, and I'm backing our leaders to say, your job's create a productive environment, their job's to figure out how to solve the problems and do it. And that has a lot of, it resonates with everyone.
Great. So one final question. What's next? What big changes should we anticipate in work and the future of work in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think we have to have our antennas up for listening to what is actually working. One of our, I mentioned one of the 6 parameters we measure our leaders on is listening and learning and leveraging from others. We give our leaders a lot more credit if their canvas is a lot wider. So if they're learning externally, pulling that, and externally being other companies outside of IBM pulling it in, I give them a lot more credit than someone leveraging a practice from someone that's sitting next to them. That's still good, but the greater learning is listening and seeing the signals before they've passed you by. And as an example of that, we had some squads that learned a lot from Apple about how to provision Macs over the cloud without an image, and we're the first company to really do that at scale. And I gave them a lot of credit because they went out and dropped their ego and arrogance and said, we're going to go figure this out, let's learn. And the collective wisdom always outweighs individual insights. So I think our view was, the windshield's always a lot bigger than the rear view mirror. So don't make your future future judgments based on your past decisions. So keep a wide canvas.
Great. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you so much for your interesting insights. And with that, we're going to go to a break. We'll take a 20-minute break. Encourage you to enjoy the snacks and the beverages that are in the back.